Hey, I'm Travis from Titus Adventure Company. We're out here today with one of our forerunners in the St. Mary's Glacier area of Colorado. And we wanted to give a little bit of information about how to drive some basic to moderate 4x4 roads. A lot of Colorado and surrounding states have awesome overlanding opportunities, and they usually involve taking some 4x4 roads to get off the beaten track. And we want to show you how to do that easily and safely. So in this video, we're going to cover a few things, kind of what the vehicle needs to look like, some of the gear you should bring, go through some of the driving. We're going to deflate tires, we're going to drive some challenging sections so you can see how we do it. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics for the vehicle. And there's a lot of stuff you can do. People go crazy with building out their vehicles. I'll kind of break it down into things that I think you really need to have and things that are nice to have. In the category of need to have is, the first thing is tires. So a lot of times the factory tires that you get are okay, but if you're really getting out on the off-road, those tires are not going to hold up well. So we run some AT tires, and they do really well with, they get you a little more grip, and then they're also stronger, so they're less likely to puncture. Another thing that's really important is to have not only four-wheel drive, but then four low. So the low range is like a second set of gearing that really helps when the terrain gets really steep. And it's a little different than your all-wheel drive systems. People can do a lot in all-wheel drive, but as you again get heavier vehicles or you're doing really more advanced stuff, the all-wheel drive just isn't as capable. The other thing that's I think really important is a full-size spare tire, because you are again have a higher risk of popping a tire out on these trails. The things that are nice to have is a vehicle lift. And again, that gets you a little more clearance, less likely to be scraping your bumpers and stuff. Another thing that's important to have is some body armor potentially. What we do on ours is a steel skid plate, and then we put rock sliders on the side of the vehicle, which also serve as a great running board. Some of the gear that we think is the most important is your air compressor, and that's to reinflate your tires when you're done with the trail. And then kind of similar to that is your deflator tools. So that's a way to pull the air out of your tire faster when you're starting the trail. If you're going out with other folks, sometimes some walkie-talkies can be really nice, or having radios built in the car so that you can be communicating with other people on the trail. Extra fuel if we know we're going to be doing a really long section out kind of in the middle of nowhere. Battery jumpers and cables. Bring some tools with you. We provide kind of a multi-tool Leatherman in our vehicles for our renters, but if I'm going out with guests, or if you're going out with yourself, you can also buy some pretty neat, pretty comprehensive toolkits that kind of fold up into a briefcase. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about recovery gear. And one piece of advice I was given is, if you're not as skilled in recovery, the best thing to do is to just try to get a ride into town and call for help to have some professionals help you out. And that's true if you come across a vehicle that is stranded. If you're not sure exactly how to help recover them, the best thing is to give them a ride into town, or let them use your phone if you need be. Another piece of recovery gear you see a lot are traction boards. Those are usually kind of long, orange or bright colored plastic boards that have spikes on them, and those can be handy, particularly in real loose situations. Kind of put them behind your tire or in front of your tire, and you can drive over them to help you get through stuff. Some people will use them as like little bridges if you need to cross something that's like a really big dip. You can use them as a bridge to drive on. Some of the more basic recovery stuff that I definitely recommend are a shovel, and then I bring a saw along with us. You never know if you might come across a log. All right, so we're at the beginning of kind of the more rocky, challenging part of the 4x4 trail, and it's time to deflate our tires. So one first question is like, well, when do I deflate our tires? Usually on easy dirt roads, there's really no reason to deflate. Usually you do it when you start to get into more challenging, rocky, or real loose terrain, and you can deflate the tires. And there's three main reasons we're going to deflate the tires. The first is that we're less likely to pop the tire when it's at a lower pressure from a rock hitting it. The second is we get more surface area at the bottom of the tire when it's a little lower. It spreads out more, so we get more grip. And then the third is kind of the ride quality inside. It's going to be smoother for us as we go over the rocks with less air in the tires. We're going to deflate our tires down to about 20 psi. I find that's a good range, not too low and not too high. If you go really low, you actually run the risk of the tire popping off the rim of the wheel, and that can be a real pain in the butt. As you get more advanced, some people will lower the pressure more, and then they actually have these bead lockers that will hold up the rim on there. So to deflate, you can do it a couple different ways. One is, just putting the Leatherman or a stick inside the stem and deflating it. That takes a little bit longer. What I think works pretty well are these self-deflators, and they're set at 20 psi, and we can screw them on, air will start coming out, and then at 20 psi, spring closes and they stop letting air out. And we have 4 of them, so we kind of go around to each tire and deflate them. As you get more advanced, there is another tool that screw on and actually pulls the core out, and it'll deflate much faster. A little bit of risk there is you can mess up the core, and if that happens on the trail, you may not be able to get the tire to inflate again. All right, let's talk about the different driving modes. In these vehicles, we've got 2-wheel drive, we've got high 4, and we've got low 4. So when do we want to use them all? 2-wheel drive is going to be anytime you're on drive pavement and highway speeds and things like that. High 4 is one we can shift into, and usually I don't use it much when we're out on the trails. I use it mostly in the wintertime when we might be going on snowy roads but want to go a little faster. And then we use low 4 when we're getting onto these more 4x4 roads and we're going slow, we're going up steep stuff. And it's a great way for the vehicle to not have to work as hard because we're in a lower gear range, similar to like your bicycle when you put into a small chain ring when you're climbing a hill. It's easier on the engine. And so to get into these different modes, each car is a little different, but on this 4Runner, we can go from 2-wheel drive, which is what I'm in now, to high 4, and I can be in any gear I want to be in to do that. And then to go to low 4, we do need to take the transmission, put it into neutral, and then we're going to swing this over and way up here, and now we're in low 4. And that's true on pretty much any truck or SUV for low 4. You need to put the transmission into neutral. And the same is true when we get out of low 4. We got to go back into neutral. So once we're in low 4, Matt, we're going to be going about 15 miles an hour or under, and you'll feel the truck going a much slower, kind of crawling type speed. And it's a great way to, again, start to do some of these more technical roads. All right, let's talk a little bit about our driving position once we get onto these 4x4 trails. One thing we're going to do is increase how much we can see out of the windshield. And the best way to do that is to kind of raise our seat up, and we're going to push it forward a little bit and kind of get ourselves in a little bit more upright and forward position. Another thing when we're holding the steering wheel is keeping a nice loose grip on it. The steering wheel can really start to go back and forth once we start to hit the rocks as the rocks move the tires around. And we kind of just want to let it go loosely in our hands. We don't want to really wrap our thumbs around here because that can restrict the movement and you can actually hurt your thumbs that way. And the final thing I do is adjust my side view mirrors, and I'm going to angle them down quite a bit so I can see my rear tires on the ground. And that helps me understand when my rear tires are going over an obstacle, or maybe there's a log and I need to turn around that obstacle. And I can see when my rear tires are clear of that obstacle there. All right, so we've been out driving a little bit, and we've come up to an obstacle that we want to get out of the vehicle and scout and walk a little bit. Before we're going to get out, though, we need to set the parking brake right so that the vehicle doesn't have a chance of rolling away while we're outside the vehicle. We're on an incline here, so the vehicle would definitely want to slide back if we didn't do that right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put it into neutral, and then we're going to set the parking brake really hard and slowly let off the brake pedal. We want to have the vehicle come to a complete stop and it's not moving. And then we're going to put the vehicle into park. And while we do that, what we're doing is we're preventing the parking pawl, which is what engages when you put the vehicle into park. That is like a little piece of metal, and we don't want that to break from the weight of the vehicle. So now we know the brakes themselves are what's holding the vehicle and not this little piece of metal. All right, so let's go get out and we'll walk this section and check out the obstacle. When we come up to sections on the trail that are look a little challenging and we're not quite sure how we want to drive them, a good thing to do is to get out of the car and let's walk it. And we can start to look at where our tires are going to go. We put our hands out, that's usually about the width of the tires of the vehicle. And we can be thinking about, all right, one tire is going to be in this section, one tire is going to go over this rock here, and kind of just have your hands out as a good reference to figure out how you're going to drive over the different obstacles. So as we're driving these roads, we're going to really emphasize going slow. Not too much bad things can happen when we're going real slow, particularly as it's a little more challenging terrain. So keep that as kind of the number one thing of just keeping vehicle speed low. The other thing we don't want to do is really do a lot of tire slipping. So if we are kind of at an obstacle and we're trying to climb it and the wheels are spinning a bunch, don't just keep hitting the gas to try to climb it. Back up a little bit, try a new line, keep your kind of RPMs low and you're just trying to crawl over stuff. On the terrain that's a little steeper, either if you're going up or down, we use the shifting into different gears. And so on our 4Runners and a lot of other vehicles, you can shift over into a manual mode and then downshifting. And a lot of times you're kind of at 2 or 1, depending on how the terrain is looking. So when you're going down a hill, you don't want to be riding the brakes because they're going to heat up and they could fail. So you really use your gearing to shift down into first gear. When you're in 4 low and you're in first gear, these cars are going to go about 5 miles an hour down the hill, and they're going to do that without you having to use the brake. That's a great way to make sure you're not burning up your brake pads. When we're driving and we see bigger rocks that we can't clearly straddle and avoid hitting, we're going to put our tires on them. And that does a couple things. We're going to make sure we don't cause damage on the underside of our vehicle by hitting these big rocks. It's also, when we get up onto these rocks, we're using the tires. The tires are really strong. They're not gonna pop from that. And when we get up onto a rock, it brings the whole vehicle up higher too. And so we're less likely to hit stuff on the undercarriage of it. All right, so we're gonna be going down a pretty steep hill here, and it's pretty long and it's really rocky. Probably a little bit more than an intermediate trail, but to show you sort of what our crawl control feature looks like on this 4Runner. So think of it as a little bit of like off-road cruise control, in that it's gonna change our pace for us, and we set it on a knob up here. We change how fast we wanna go. I have my foot off the brake and accelerator, just like you kind of would for cruise control. And we're able to go really slow. It's basically rapidly firing the ABS brakes, which is kind of what you hear, this pulsing, and it feels a little jerky, but it's a great way to keep your speed under control. You're not riding the brakes the whole time, heating them up. And it's a great way to descend stuff that's really steep. You can also use it when you're climbing something that's really steep, particularly if it's rocky and you're losing a little bit of traction. You engage cruise control or crawl control, and the car will kind of climb up stuff and it won't let the wheels spin. All right, let's talk a little bit about trail etiquette. One of the big challenges here is that the roads are really narrow and there's really only one width of a vehicle. So what do you do when you come across another person? The rule of thumb is that the uphill traffic has the right of way, and then the downhill traffic needs to pull over or back up to go to a spot where they can pull over. That's a general rule of thumb. When you're out here on the trail, look at where their most recent pull-off was. Maybe the person that is going uphill could just back up a touch and be able to pull over. So that's kind of the rule of thumb, though. If it is a real tight area, you may want to have people get out of the car and help spot you to make sure you're passing. Not going to hit the person, but also not going to, get off the trail. when you're seeing, sometimes you can look way ahead and see the trail, and if you see somebody coming and you don't see a good spot to pull over for a while, hey, maybe just stay here for a bit and let them come through. You'll also see quite a few blind corners. When you come across those, pull over kind of to your side, go nice and slow. We use hand signals out here. You'll often see ATVs or dirt bikes or side-by-side use them. Vehicles use them sometimes. But if you see other people doing it, this is kind of what it means. So if you see somebody holding up like 2 fingers, that means there are 2 vehicles or bikes behind that person. And then the next person will hold up a 1, saying there's 1 more behind. And then the final person will do a fist, indicating that they were the last person. So if you see that, that's what that means. It's also, if you're in a convoy, it's a great idea to do that so that other people know how many people are maybe coming behind you. Obviously, know your limits and your skills, and don't go to places you're not capable of doing. If you were to have an accident, break down, get stuck, you're gonna disrupt the whole trail. You're gonna have other people driving through there that won't be real happy with you. We want to make sure we're staying the trail. That means not, winding around in the meadows or through the forest. You're sticking on the road. And if we're seeing mud or big potholes, instead of trying to go around them, just go through them, go nice and slow. When you go through them, you're actually going to make that area a bigger drainage area and make more of a mud hole down the road. When we're talking about going through water, also don't fly through it, make a big splash. I know it looks cool, but that's just going to splash more water onto vegetation and kill it, or more mud on the vegetation and kill it, and then create more of an erosion problem. When you're going through creeks and stuff, we want to go nice and slow, usually in 4 low, and we're just kind of rolling through it. Again, we're not going real fast, and we're not going to stop in the middle of a real creek crossing. A good rule of thumb is to kind of come up to the middle of your tires, the middle of the hubcap for depth. If it's a lot more than that, you have the risk of potentially getting air or water into the air. So we finished driving the 4x4 trail. We're back kind of on the main roads. We're gonna refill our tires, and we've got our air compressor hooked up to our battery and ready to fill them up. We're gonna be shooting for around 32 to 35. You can always check the PSI on the door for what it recommends to run it at. And we'll be able to hook them up all 4, do 1 at a time. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute to fill each one of them back up. And our gauge will tell us the pressure so we can know when they're done. Hopefully that's some helpful information to get you started as you venture onto the 4x4 roads. Our vehicles and gear let you explore some really awesome areas, and having the basic skills will let you do it safely. If you want to learn more, I highly recommend taking some classes with Matt at On Trails Training here in the Denver area, and we'll put some links on how to find out about his classes.